Today, I have these wonderful assorted hot peppers that I've just harvested from my yard. And it seems to me that makes this a really, really good time to make hot pepper jam. Most people call it hot pepper jelly, but I'm leaving the fruit in there, so as far as I know, that's a jam. Let's get started. One of the first things I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to find 300 grams of hot peppers. I think I'll be okay with that. Okay, so the recipe that I'm using today calls for 12 medium jalapeno peppers, stemmed and seeded, approximately 300 grams. Now, I'm not using jalapeno peppers, so I don't know how that's going to affect this in the long run. I'm big on that experimental cooking. However, these are very hot peppers, so I'm hoping this will work out just as well. Well, I guess I'm going to have to stem and seed quite a few of these nice shiny red peppers and get myself a nice weight of 300 grams. Since these are some fairly hot peppers and I've had some accidents in the past, I strongly advise the use of some sort of glove whenever dealing with any hot pepper. Let's just turn this scale on. We'll see how well that's showing up. Hopefully you can see. Now it says stemmed and seeded, but in my experience the seeds are some of the hottest part of these things. So I'm leaving it in there. Like I say, the recipe is just a guide. Just a guide. Now that pepper looks nice. Maybe put some orange ones in there, see if it maintains any of its color. Some of these albino ones could be nice. What's amazing to me is that all of these peppers, aside from those two whitish ones I put in there, started off dark purple. Like dark purple. Then they've kind of gone to green and there are various other colors from there. That only takes us to halfway. There's some more orange ones. This is a rainbow pepper after all. I should try and get as much color as I can into the jelly. Well, jam. Because as far as I know, the difference is that you strain the fruit out of a jelly, and I have no intention of doing that. I'm leaving the fruit in there, I'm leaving the seeds in there, I want it all. $2.98. Guess I need a little one. Let's try that one. $2.99, $3.01. 300. Yay, it balanced out in the middle. Well, that is good enough for me. Time to move on to the next step. Anytime I'm doing any kind of canning, I like to get the water started in my canner as soon as I can, especially in this particular kitchen. I don't know how well you can see it, but we don't exactly have top-of-the-line equipment. While the water's boiling in there, it's also going to take the opportunity to sterilize my jars. They're already nice and clean and everything, but better safe than sorry. So I'm just going to dunk these in here so that can get started. And we'll get back to making jelly. Alright, now, this is the part where you have to remember, in my world, the recipe is just a guide. It's just a guide. The recipe that I'm starting with here, for example, suggests that I should take my 300 grams of peppers and blend it with half of the vinegar until there's no chunks of pepper left. And then mix it into the sauce pot. However, what I'm going to do is get a larger knife. And then after that, because I don't want to destroy my blender and leave it tasting like pepper for the rest of eternity, I'm just going to dice this up, mix it all up from there. I'm going to put all the vinegar in at once, all the sugar in at once, and I'm going to just totally disregard that section of the recipe. Not too worried about leaving any of these chunks too terribly large. Anybody that would be getting this jelly from me already knows to take it with a word of caution. Alright, now that I've reduced that beautiful pile of peppers into this, we're ready to move on. Now, for the rest of this recipe, in addition to the 300 grams of pepper, we're also going to need 6 cups of sugar. It says cane sugar, but I don't happen to have that. 2 cups of apple cider vinegar. This is an unopened container, 500 milliliters, that's 2 cups. 2 pouches of liquid pectin. Food coloring is optional. I tend to not include food coloring in my cooking. Now that we've got everything all together, we're going to want to take our 300 grams of blended, or in my case, chopped up really well, peppers. As much of that off of there as I can. Mix it up really well with our 2 cups of apple cider vinegar. Like I said, the recipe says to do this slightly different. But as I've also said many times, the recipe is just a guideline. I'm going to want to make sure that's turned up nice and high, because I'm also going to want to stir in 6 cups of sugar, which is rather a lot. Now it's really important to keep stirring this the whole time that it's going. Sugar can scald and burn quite easily, and that's not what we're going for here. We're looking for a nice, even dissolve. Something else worth mentioning, if you get the opportunity to find a silicone spatula, always use a silicone spatula when you're making jellies and jams. It's just so much easier to clean, and it does such a fantastic job along the edges, keeping everything mixed back in. Now I'm going to want to bring this to a boil and keep it there for about 10 minutes. And when I say bring this to a boil, I don't mean, oh, there's a bubble, it's done. I mean, this is going to come to a boil where even when I'm stirring it, it's still bubbling. Now that we've got this to a nice, good rolling boil, no amount of stirring is going to stop that. It's time to add my 2 pouches of liquid pectin and let it boil for another full minute more. So I'll set the timer for a minute. Stir that through. And this beautiful stuff is one step closer to being in the jar. Alright. It's had a good minute plus boiling with the pectin in there. So I've turned off the heat. Now it's just a matter of ladling it into these prepared jars I have conveniently to my left. Give it one last stir here with the ladle for good luck. And the next step is into the jars. A fairly messy individual, so it seems to me like a bowl to catch drips is a really good idea. Plus, this bowl has been chilling in the freezer for a little while, so I'll get an advanced tasting as the cool bowl chills the jelly just a little bit faster than the air temperature of the room. Had to make sure at least one of those small jars was filled. I know a certain somebody who's going to be visiting in the next few weeks who will be sorely disappointed if I don't have one of these set aside for him. Now, the recipe says it makes 8 cups. So in theory, there should be just enough in here to fill this last jar. Considering that's what's left, I'd say it made pretty close to 8 cups. The next step for all of this is where the magnet on a stick comes in nice and handy. These seals have been sitting in that nice hot water for probably a good 20 minutes now. Now when you put the rings on these, you're going to want to put them on snug before you do your water bath, but you don't want to put them on terribly tight. Air will need to escape out of these as it's going through the canning and the water bath process. So snug, but not tight. Now that I've got the canner back on here, it's time to put in my fresh jars of hot pepper jam. Now remember, these jars are going to be exceptionally hot. You do not want to touch them with your bare hand. It is definitely worth it to take the time and so-called expense of getting the proper tools for your canning kit so as not to hurt yourself while trying to make your preserves. Because who needs that? You don't need it. I don't need it. Nobody needs it. Now I'm just going to dunk this back in. And I want to make sure those jars are covered by at least an inch. And I want to make sure nothing's leaking excessive amounts of air before it even gets cooked. I did have one jar that was leaking excessive amounts of air for being just dropped in. So I'm just going to pull it out, tighten it up a bit, and be on my way. Now, with the lids resecured nice and snug, no excessive leaks, at least an inch worth of water over the tops of the jars, I'm good to go. I'm going to want to let this come to a boil and then give it 10 minutes before I turn off the heat. While I wait for that 10 minutes to pass, I've got my enamelware bowl with the last little bit in there. It's kind of solidifying a little bit. So this will give me an opportunity to find out just what the flavor is of what I've made here. Hopefully it's not too rough. Some nice chunks of pepper in that though. Oh, that's good. It's hot, but that's very, very good. Sweating already. Excellent. Well, there's the basics of how to make a hot pepper jelly or jam. The rest of it from here is simple canning technique. You can find out the rest of that in other videos, but my camera's dying, so I've got to go. Have a great day. Happy adventures in the kitchen. Aside from saving these hot peppers by making a jelly or a jam, you could also dehydrate them and powder them up for long-term storage that way. If you want to see a quick video on how to do that, just check right here.